Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Also, today, before I get to today I'm joined by ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. I wanted to go over the Commanders draft with somebody who has a lot of in-depth knowledge about these players that they have drafted. What did he think of the class? Then we went over each individual player and some really good insight from Jordan. He studied these guys all year and just find out a little bit about his schedule and what's going on and what he was grilling. Well, the first thing he grilled after the draft and the next thing he's going to want to grill. So I always like talking about that. You know that. Anyways, so stay tuned for that for a minute. Before I get there, just a couple things. Thursday night reminder for you gold members, 8 p.m. Eastern time Zoom. So again, 8 p.m. Eastern time for you gold members, private Zoom. Join me there. Bring your questions. It's been a couple weeks since we chatted, so hopefully you guys have a lot of things you want to talk about. So always an enjoyable time. And there you go. And don't forget, the rookie mini camp is Friday, so we'll be out. It's Friday this weekend. The media will be out there Friday. I'll have podcast afterwards about first impressions. And I bet you didn't know I did impressions, but I'll talk about the first impressions of the rookie class, the draft picks in particular, because they're the guys who are going to play a key role this season. And so there you go. Stay tuned for that. And the audio will be out shortly after it's over. And then the video might be out Saturday morning. One way or another, you'll get it and you'll be up to date on anything that happened and what was said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. That's it for me, folks. Here's my conversation with ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. All right, Jordan, it's good to see you. First of all, do you feel refreshed yet?
Not yet. I've done a lot of grilling and fishing over the past week or so, just trying to recharge the battery and just get away from the draft cycle in football a little bit, just because it's kind of the down season for everybody.
Sure.
Those 2 to 3 weeks after the draft, that's really a quiet season in the NFL for the most part. So just trying to enjoy the time while I can before getting already started on the 2026 class.
All right, so you're in my wheelhouse right now. First thing you grilled, what was it? Because there's got to be something like, I can't wait till I can just grill this after this is all done. What did you grill?
I'm a big steak guy.
All right.
New York strip is my favorite cut. I'm a big ribeye guy as well, so
Oh,
steak is always my favorite.
ribeye. Yeah. So, and fishing, what kind do you do?
So here in North Carolina, we have like a wide range. In the Charlotte area, there's largemouth bass, there's bluegills, a whole bunch. There's some brim located here as well. So really a wide variety, catfish, of course, as well. So really a wide variety. Not really fishing for one exact thing, honestly, just throwing the bait out there and see what happens.
It's got to feel nice to get away for a few minutes. So after the noise of the draft for months and months, that to just get some peacefulness has to feel pretty good.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, so let's get to the draft. Like in general, Washington only has 5 picks. How would you assess, not grade, but how would you assess in general what they got in their class?
I thought it was solid, honestly, John. I thought they hit a lot of their weak points as far as what they needed on the roster. I thought corner was a huge area that they were looking to address, getting some offensive line depth. I didn't expect them to do it as early as they did. I thought they would wait until mid or late portions of the draft to get some offensive line depth, especially with the injuries that they have going into the season. Was surprised that they didn't address edge rusher at
Right.
all. I thought arguably that was their top need going into the draft, and they didn't address that at all with any of the picks. So I think that was the biggest surprise, but overall, I thought it was really solid.
So let's start with Connolly because, like you said, they're clearly making an attempt to really protect Jaden Daniels and build that strong wall. What did you think of him?
I liked him. I had a late first, early second round grade on him, so he went really right in the range of where I thought, or where he was projected to be, I should say. What's most interesting for Washington, in my opinion, is who's going to start at right guard and right tackle. They have a
Right.
lot of bodies there. As far as with Brandon Coleman now transitioning, potentially inside, he could stay at tackle as well. Sam Cosmi, obviously the injury that he has, so. They have a lot of options there with Connolly. I'm really interested to see what happens there with the right guard and the right tackle situation, but it's a great problem to have. It's better to have a lot of options than none at all for
Right.
Washington's sake. But with Connolly, I think he's a really good project to have. He does need to gain strength. That's something that's very noticeable on his film, but as a pass protector, I think he's very sound in that area. He has really good feet as well. He's a very good athlete as well. But just the foundation that he has to work with, that's why I think Washington was so adamant about adding him, and he was just too good for them to pass up, especially in with how deep a defensive line class was this year. For them to pick him over any of the defensive linemen that was available on the board, to them, that just goes to show you how much of a priority he was.
And do a couple things with him. One, do you view him more as a right tackle or do you view him someone who could go inside?
I think he can do both, honestly. I think he's that good of an athlete. Now, I'm always of the belief that if you're on the fence about if a guy is a guard or a tackle, I would play him at tackle first and let them show that, they can't sustain play as a tackle just because it's a premium position.
Right.
And I'm always of the belief that let those guys show you that, they're not capable of playing offensive tackle first before you slide them inside. But once again, the good thing for Washington is that I always thought Brandon Coleman was more of a natural guard, even
Right.
coming out of TCU, and they surprisingly played him at left tackle. I even think that surprised a lot of you guys coming out of camp that he was their penciled in left tackle, ended up being a starter a season ago. But now with Tunsil in town, he's obviously going to be the blindside protector for Jaden Daniels. So I'm interested to see how the whole Connerly Coleman thing really unfolds with the at right guard and also right tackle.
You brought up play strength, and I know a lot of people look at that Mike Green rep in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
But where did you like? And I kind of tossed it aside. Someone else, I had a reporter on from the Oregonian. He's like, listen, that was his first snap at right tackle. The next play, he stones him, blah, blah, blah. But on film during the season, where did you see that?
I mean, you didn't really see him get ran over like that, honestly, at
Not
all
like
on
that,
this
but just the
Oregon
play
tape. Yeah.
strength. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's something that shows up with him. It's just running his feet on contact and getting stronger in his lower half. And like you said, the play strength does need to improve with him. You would like to see him generate a little bit more movement at the point of attack, but that's just him being a really young player. And then with the whole Mike Green thing, everybody remembers the one rep from social
Right.
media, but nobody remembers him getting Offensive Lineman of the Week at the Senior Bowl. So
Right.
he had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, but everybody only remembers that one rep for some reason.
Well, it's funny because like, and this is an aside, but in practices, like training camp practices, we used to videotape one-on-one battles, which I love watching, right? It tells you a lot. But if you put out one big play by a receiver, people just rip on the defensive back and then you put out a good play by the defensive back and all they remember is the one play. So you know what I mean? So like they stopped making that period available for us to tweet out. And I don't blame them because it never painted a complete picture. It was one rep of one practice. So that's how I kind of took that one for sure. Like, but what else with Connolly? Because he is young. So
Yeah.
where did you see him maybe as a college player grow and like how good do you think he could become here?
I think he'd be a solid starter on either side. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if, now this is a huge if the Tunsil thing doesn't work out, they transition him to the left side and he can be a left tackle as well. And I think that's what they debated in the draft room, excuse me, of why he was so valuable. He can play on the left side, he can play on the right side, he can play inside as well. He's really played every position outside of center during his career. So there's so much versatility that he does have, and there's so many different positions that you can start him out with. So versatility is always king when you're talking about these offensive linemen. And I think they just see a big ball of clay with him. And he already has a really good foundation to work off of as well. And you pair him with Brandon Coleman on that right side. I think they have a formidable offensive line on that right side, just because I think the left side is already solid now with Tunsil in town. So they just wanted to we have this huge investment at quarterback. We know he's a really special player based off of what he showed his rookie season. So let's go ahead and protect him, getting two building blocks in Tunsil and then also Connerly as well. I think they've done a really good job of not only surrounding him with formidable protection, but also they've been aggressive with adding weapons as well. So with Connolly, I would start him right away. Honestly, I put him at right tackle. Let's just see what happens with that. If things don't work out, I think you have the depth. If he does need to slide inside, I think you can kick Coleman back outside at right tackle. And then you have some other options along the interior that you can use to patchwork that offense, or excuse me, that right guard spot too.
Were there any edges? Because like my thought on the edge stuff was if you're not getting one the first, second round, you kind of already have that guy in your roster, right? But were there any edges like because they didn't have the third round pick. So any edges in the fourth
Yeah.
round or later that you said like this would have been a good one to maybe bring in to try and develop.
I'm just trying to think back who was on the board at the time. Nobody comes to mind
Yeah,
where they did select. But even at 29, I mean, there were some really good ones on the
yeah,
board. You know, Nick
sure.
Scorton was there. Mike Green, depending on how they felt about the off field. Donovan Ezeraku was there, who was linked to Washington a ton throughout the pre-draft process as well. So I think they just felt really good about Connolly. And then they
Right.
valued some other players that they picked in the mid rounds as well. Trey Amos, I'm sure we'll talk about him as
Yeah.
well. They felt really good about him as well. So I think just the players that were available to them on the board, they just felt the pros outweighed on some of the other defensive ends that were on the board at the time.
Sure. And like that for sure. Like this was not a we have to take a tackle. This is we want to take this kid. And then last thing on him, the matchups against Abdul Carter. He's facing a couple of rushers with Ohio State with Josiah Stewart from Michigan too. Like how much did you learn about him just from those matchups? And what did you learn?
Well, those are always going to be the first games that you turn on. Who was he going against in these certain games? And as you mentioned, he went against guys like Abdul Carter, Josiah Stewart, and some of the other players that he played throughout the season. Even in, the Ohio State matchups, they went
Right.
against those guys multiple times throughout the season. So you're seeing him go against JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, some of these other players that were drafted really highly as well. So we're getting to see him in some of these different matchups. So that's the great thing about him, just being able to see him go against those guys. And I think he held up really well throughout the season. He only played left tackle during his career at Oregon, so we don't have a sample size of him on the right side, but I think he's capable of moving over to that right side and being just fine.
And then on Trey Amos, were you surprised he was there at 61?
Yeah, I think I was one of the biggest surprises through the first two rounds of the draft, just because if they would have took him at 29, I would have been completely fine with it as well. I valued him that highly. For them to get him at 61, I think they got two bona fide starters right away in this year's draft class. And I think they even were surprised that he was there on the board for them at 61. But I think it's a great fit for Washington just because I love the Lattimore deal, but we know he's battled some durability concerns. And I think they honestly want to move Sanders still back inside. Even though he held up well on the outside, he has that dog in him that you love. He has the ball skills as well. I just think he's most natural and he's at his best when he's along that he's inside at that nickel spot. So you get Trey Amos, you get as insurance for Lattimore. You get the slide, Sanders still back inside as well. I mean, I like it. I really like the pick a lot.
What did you like most about Amos?
I think just the fluidity that he has. He's been productive at every single spot that he's been at, whether it's at Lafayette during the earlier portions of his career at Alabama. He was a spot player there, but we knew the talent that he had. And then at Ole Miss, he just really blossomed. He turned back into that player that we saw at Lafayette. But the ball skills that he has, the coverage versatility that he plays with, I think he can play press man, he can play off man. He's really good in zone as well. 15 ball deflections or pass breakups last year, I should say, which was second most in the country. So he has really good ball production as well, which is what you want to see at that corner spot. So it's just a combination of the size, the coverage versatility that he has, and then the ball skills too.
And the last thing, how do you, when a guy has those skills and you pair him with Lattimore, who has, his own outside corner skills, right? How can you change coverages or maybe do things with your coverages because you have those kind of guys on the outside?
Well, it allows you to do a lot of things up front just because you really trust and you can rely on those guys on the back end. So if I want to run some exotic stuff in the front seven, I know I'm going to be able to hold up in the secondary just because I have the talented enough athletes, whether it's man or zone or whatever you want to run, whatever you're trying to disguise. I trust those guys on the back end just because they have the athleticism, they have the fluidity, they have the awareness, and they have the mental capacity to where we can do all of that stuff as well.
Jalen Lane, fourth round speed guy, Virginia Tech. What'd you think?
I mean, with Washington, the worst kept secret was them trying to add some speed at receiver,
Right,
and they
right.
definitely did that with Lane. I mean, he was phenomenal at the combine. He ran 4.34, I believe it was, jumped 40 inches in the vertical as well. So we know the athleticism was really good. The down the field dynamic with him is really good too, which is something that, Washington's receiver core didn't have going into the draft. They needed that speed guy down the field. We know Jaden Daniels is an exceptional down the field passer as well. And I think there's more to unlock with this game, honestly. I don't think Virginia Tech really utilized him down the field enough, in my honest opinion. And I think there's more to unlock with this game. So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he has a couple of down the field touchdowns very early on in the season, especially, with Cliff. Cliff wants to push the ball down the field, and they have the quarterback that's capable of finding the ball, pushing the ball down the field and finding him down there too.
And now a line that when
Yeah.
it comes together, and
Yep.
who knows how long it comes together, but when it does, you give the guy more time to do what he does really well, and you add a guy who can get down there fast alongside Terry McLaurin. When you talk about Virginia Tech, and when I was watching a lot of Tech, it's a lot of reverses and things like that, like more horizontal pushing it.
hmm
Was that just a function of they don't have the quarterback to do that, you think, or is it just? And then what more could do you feel like he could do?
Well, the quarterback was a little inconsistent, Kyron Drones, who will be a prospect in next year's draft. And I just don't think they trusted their protection to hold up consistently to get him down the field. And with a playmaker like that, if you're having inconsistencies at quarterback and then also inconsistencies up front, you want to manufacture some touches to guys like that really quickly. So that's why you're seeing the reverses. You're seeing some perimeter screens, just getting the ball into his hands as quickly as possible so that 4-3-4 speed can really take over and you can use it and utilize it as much as you can. So that's why I think there's more to uncover with him. That's why I said that a little bit earlier, where you can use him down the field. They just didn't have the protection to really hold up to get the ball down the field to use him in that way.
And then last thing on him is a punt returner.
Yeah, I mean, that's where he's going to contribute very early on, in my honest opinion. I think he could be a day one starter as a punt returner, has a really good feel for it. And you can really see those instincts really take over when he gets the ball in his hands on those reverses and those quick screens. And he really uses that a lot of times as a punt returner as well. So you'll see it in preseason. You're at practice every single day. You'll see how natural he is catching the ball, and you'll see how natural he is after the catch process, just maneuvering his way through traffic too.
Keim linebacker, UCLA.
Fun player, man. Really fun player. Very, very athletic. And, Carson Schlesinger got a lot of the love from UCLA, and rightfully so, being the first pick in the second round to the Browns. But Madrano was somebody that definitely popped on film. He's going to contribute in special teams as well, which I think that's where he's going to have to make his name for himself very early on, just because it's crowded on the linebacker depth chart in Washington. They have a lot of really good players at linebacker. They're excited about some players they took in last year's draft too. So it's going to
Mhm.
be a battle, but I think he's going to have to make a name for himself on special teams early on. But he has the athleticism to really run down the field and be a core four special teams guy really early on. But the speed shows up a lot on film. The tackle reliability shows up too.
What about as a cover guy? Because it would seem like if there's a role early on that you could develop from, if he gets there, it'd be as much as a cover guy. How is he in that area? Because he runs like someone else. He runs
Yeah.
like a receiver or a safety, right?
It's a little bit inconsistent right now. He's more of a what I like to call spot dropper. Whatever it says in the playbook, that's where he's going to
Okay.
go. You just need to use some instincts and be more instinctive in that area. So understanding, looking around, trying to see what routes are being ran into your zone, what routes are exiting your zone as well. So just being more instinctive in zone. But the great thing about him is he has the athleticism to hold up and man. And we see a lot of offensive coordinators throughout the NFL. They're very smart. So they try to isolate those linebackers and get them on running backs, option routes, and things of that nature with those slot receivers. So for him, I definitely think he has the athleticism to hold up in man coverage. It's just the instincts and zone covers need to get a little better.
Cool. And then running back, to me, one of the more intriguing picks is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I was surprised he went as late as he did, honestly. I thought he probably would go more so in the fifth round. Excuse me, that's where I had him on my draft board, but it's tough, especially when somebody that's only played one game last year. But in the East West Shrine Bowl, that's really where you saw a lot of his skill set really take over. I thought he's phenomenal during the week of practice, and then he shined in the game as well. But with him, I think he's a really good hands catcher out of the backfield. He's really good as a runner between the tackles. He can run outside of the tackles as well. I think there's a lot of upside with him, and I think he's going to be one of the gems of this year's draft class. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if he finds himself a role
Mhm.
just because they got to figure out exactly how this running back room is going to shake out with them having, I believe, three pending free agents
Yeah.
going into the season. It's a bit crowded right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's one of those guys that shines in preseason and then goes on to carve out of himself a role somewhere along earlier in the earlier portions of the season.
Why do you think he went and didn't go until the seventh round?
I think it's just the sample size, honestly, John. And then just the bouncing around that he did. And I know that's the day and age of this year's, college transfer portal and all that other stuff. But him only playing one game last year, there's not going to be a lot of teams that take a chance on that just because they're all about, getting a huge sample size going into the draft. Him only playing one game, there's just not a lot of teams that are comfortable with taking a player like that. But I mean, you turn on the New Mexico tape, he was awesome. Like that was outside of a lot of running backs, as far as mid to late guys in this year's draft class, he was one of my favorites to study in this year's class just because he's so versatile. Like I mentioned, I think there's a lot more to uncover with him as far as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Not saying he's going to be Alvin Kamara where
Right.
you're drawing up option routes for him, but on those quick swings, some other things of where you want to get him the ball really quickly. I think he's able to do that. But as far as the vision that he has, the acceleration that he has as well, I think he's gonna surprise a lot of you guys, especially early on in the preseason.
He runs angry, and those
Yeah.
angry runners fire up teams. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
And Brian Robinson has some of that too, right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But like, that's one of the things that he does is he runs angry and like he's going to run over some guys or get extra yards because of that. If nothing else, like, but that seems to be a big time trait for him. Is how would you just do you agree with that? Like, and what
Yeah.
how do you see that helping him?
Well, just studying the draft over the past 7 years, doing this, one thing that always translates with running backs to the next level is being able to consistently break tackles and contact balance. Contact balance is something that a lot of teams are really adamant about just because you're going to get hit in the NFL. Like there's going to be bodies thrown at you, there's going to be players trying to tackle you all over the place. But if you have the ability to create on your own and have great contact balance to where you can create what I like to call that hidden yardage and always fall forward, you're always going to have a role in the NFL. You're going to have a very long career, especially as a running back. With them being so interchangeable in today's day and age, I think Krosky Merritt is somebody you can get a lot of good value out of during that 4 years of his rookie deal.
And it's funny because he does, when you watch him, he's lowering his shoulder, always going
Yep.
forward. Very rarely do you see him not lowering his shoulder when he gets through even the first, second level. So, or to the second level, you're going to see him do that, which helps get you that a couple extra yards of yak. So, when last couple things here, and when you look at this staff, like, can you tell when a staff is aligned from GM, coach, and all that? Can you tell that from your perspective, like based on how they draft and what they look for?
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell when a lot of draft picks make sense. And it's always hard to project as far as like who they're going to like, who they're going to dislike. But one thing you can always do is relate it back to the scheme that they're running, whether it's offensively or defensively. And then I'm a big listener of press conferences as well. And you probably can touch on this better than me, but I think I remember like Cliff talking about Connerly and leaving some letter on Adam Peters' desk or something like that. So you can always, you can always revert back schematically who they're going to like based on some of the players that they have drafted in years past, and then who are some of the prospects that compare very favorably to that in this year's class, and then just move forward from there. But you can never honestly know who's on their draft board, who's off their
Right.
draft board. But the one thing that we can use is the sample size in years past based on Adam Peters' first year draft class, which was drafting productive guys from big schools that are ready to play right away. That's something that's been consistent in both of his draft classes so far. As far as drafting guys that are ready to play right away, he doesn't draft projects. Based on what I have seen, especially in the earlier rounds, he want guys that can, come in and can play right away. So that's something that's been consistent, and that really was consistent through this year's class too.
And I know this will be the last thing, but I know Shador brought up a lot, got a lot of the attention for his
Yeah.
where he went. But how many guys are you really surprised by where they end up going? Like, do you have a good, because everybody always talks about the boards. Well, the board says this and all that. But how well do you think people really know a team's board before the draft? And so how many guys are you really surprised by that end up falling?
There's always surprises, whether it's medical, character, and then some other background stuff that we don't really have information to. So there's always a surprise player that may have dropped because of those areas of concern. And not saying that happened to Shador, but just saying there's a player
Right.
like that that happens to every year. So we don't always have, and that's the tough part from the media side, honestly.
Sure.
We're not sitting down at meetings at the combine and watching film with these guys and, talking to the strength coaches and talking to the head coaches just to get background information on all these players. So a lot of what we're going off of is leaning on sources, and then of course the game tape as well. So there's always a surprise player that really slips, to the later portions of the draft or anything like that. But as far as just like projecting players to certain teams' board, it's not very hard, honestly, just
Right.
because it goes back to the schematics thing.
Right.
And then also, what are the values of the GM that somebody has? Like, for example, one that I kept talking about was Jacksonville with James Gladstone.
Mhm.
Retracing back to his days with the Rams, very similar to Adam Peters. They want to draft players that can come in and can play and contribute right away, which is what his final year there they did with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. And then if you look at the draft class from this year, trading up for a guy like Travis Hunter, some of the other players, Caleb Ransaw from Tulane, who I think is a player that's really ready to come in and play right away. So you can always trace back to some of the philosophies or tendencies that they have had in previous stops, or just looking at their previous draft classes and trying to just see who fits schematically.
What's next for you, and when's the next thing you have coming out?
So my 2026 mock draft has already came out. That came out a week ago. So I started watching tape on those guys during the pro day circuit, which was really mid-February all the way through the end of March, just preparing for that. I usually take a whole month of May off just to recharge the battery. But once June gets here, now it's starting to get background information to make calls about the 2026 guys. And then I'll just be watching tape all summer, and late August will be here before you know it. And we'll be in the middle of the season, or the beginning
Next
of the
thing
season,
you're
I should say.
next thing you're grilling? What's the next thing you're grilling?
Um, Probably some chicken, honestly. I'm a big chicken guy as
How
well,
do you
grilling
do
some
it?
chicken. I have so many different ways. What's your favorite way to do it?
I like the beer can chicken, but instead
Yeah,
of a
beer
beer
can's
can,
really good.
instead of the beer can, I core a
Hmm.
pineapple and put the pineapple up there, or sometimes spatchcocking. I kind of
Love
alternate.
it.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm still trying to use those seasonings you got me, man. The
Oh, that's
spicy
right.
beef rub and all that stuff.
The
I
the
haven't cracked it open yet.
okay, the beef rub on the steaks, like there, it's really it's. But you listen, if you got your steak methods, but it's really good. It's good
Hmm.
stuff. So hopefully you can get that going soon. But and
I am.
hopefully
I'm gonna text you as soon as I use
All right, man.
it.
Jordan, thanks a lot. Always great, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you as always, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Friday with another episode talking about the rookie minicamp, our first look at the rookies. I'll talk to you next time.